Hello, and welcome to another edition of Recycle. Don't be a waster. In today's episode, we are going to cover, it might be a misconception, but it's a commonly asked question as to how much money do waste companies make, or even recycling companies make from plastic recycling, or how profitable is plastic recycling? And I suppose would this be debunking? Is that the term? Maybe we're debunking a common misconception. The sad reality is, in the vast majority of cases, plastic recycling is not really commercially viable. And when I mean that, when I say that, basically what I mean is it isn't profitable without significant subsidies. And you might ask why. You probably see garbage trucks and recycling trucks driving past your house with signs up saying resource recovery, and we recycle this and we recycle that. And of course, that is very, very true when we're in the context of metals, of course, aluminium, copper, and even precious metals. It's even true in the case of cardboard. It's probably break even in the case of glass. It's certainly in aluminium, it certainly is true. But when we get into the world of plastic, as we know, it is not really true. And so I suppose we'll ask, we'll go through the reasons. The fundamental reason, any business you have, if your costs are more than your revenues, you are in big trouble. And I suppose when you dig into the plastic recycling industry, the costs are numerous and the revenues are basically zero. And again, this is assuming that we're not incinerating, we're not burning that plastic, which would at least release energy, which could be used to create electricity and heat homes. But if you even look at the stats as to how much plastic waste is actually recycled, so I've got some stats here. This is from the United States this is even in 2018. And if we're looking at plastics in weight in US tons, which I believe I think that's US tons are different to metric tons, but we're looking more at the ratios than anything else. Even up to 2015, recycling of municipal solid waste plastics was peaked at 8.6% of the plastic collected. Another circa 10% is incinerated for energy, and the rest is landfilled. And the reason is because it's fundamentally cheaper to dump it at landfill. So what are the reasons? Why is that? So I suppose we'll put on our accountant's hat and we will look at the costs and we'll look at the revenues. The revenues from plastic are fundamentally zero. No one really is going to pay you to get junk plastic, bad plastic, because fundamentally it's more expensive to make plastic from recycling than it is to make virgin plastic from new oil, etc. And also the recycling plastic will be of lower quality, so it's more expensive and lower quality. And so, from a clear business perspective, without government or charitable, input, without subsidies or tariffs, etc., fundamentally nobody would recycle plastic in many instances. We look at the costs of plastic to actually recycle plastic. We have to actually collect it, so we have to provide bins to people, bins at homes and businesses, which obviously are capital investment. We then need to collect those bins, so we need trucks, we need routing, we need drivers, we need systems that can collect that plastic and bring it to where we need it to go to. We then need to separate that plastic. And one thing about plastic is it comes in infinite varieties of shapes, colours, sizes, textures, which is its major selling point. But the problem is you need to separate it into the different types of plastic so that it can be recycled in single stream recycling. You then need to build a processing and recycling facility, which obviously is extremely expensive. Clearly, recycling recycling this material requires huge facilities to do it at scale. They must be reasonably well located in the centre of cities or somewhere not too far away. You need to ensure there is environmentally safe, firstly, so there's no noxious fumes, and secondly, clean so that it doesn't put the neighbours off, the NIMBYs in the area. Thirdly, you still need to add virgin plastic to it, so you need to buy additional fresh plastic that needs to go into the mix. And then obviously you need to apply electricity to heat, to create the heating that will allow you to crack the plastic and, break it down into granular systems so that it can be melted and turned into new fresh plastic, new recycled plastic. All of these are costs, and obviously with energy prices through the roof, this is being recorded in late 2022, you can understand that the cost base is high. The revenues from it fundamentally are very low. No one really will pay you for this plastic. Potentially, if it was being incinerated, potentially there would be people may pay for that, and that's, or probably more likely take it for free. So it's a cheaper option than dumping at landfill. Keeping in mind that dumping at landfill costs in Sydney, which is more expensive than other cities and states in Australia, dumping at landfill is roughly, on the back of an envelope, $300 per tonne. So there is if you could find a cheaper way of doing it, that would be significant. I suppose this is where government funding, whether federal or state funding comes in, and where subsidisation is important. To date, what they've done is not so much pay for plastic, but which is something that could be explored, but fundamentally subsidise by making dumping at landfill relatively more expensive by applying landfill levies. So you pay, $150 per tonne that you dump at landfill. And obviously if you avoid that by recycling or some other usage, you don't have to pay that number. But it still isn't having that big an impact. So, on a simple business model, you have to produce a revenue. You have to, you have to either reduce the costs or you have to increase the revenues. You could decrease the costs by improving technologies, by making it easier, by increasing scale, by having better separation systems, by subsidising collection. And, subsidising collection has been done. But I suppose from a revenue perspective, how can you make, and this again will come down to technology improvements. If you improve the technology of recycling, potentially people will pay for that plastic rubbish. In recent years, before China stopped importing plastic, we were basically, and when I say we, I mean Australia, countries, Western countries such as the United States, Western Europe, were fundamentally exporting their plastic junk to China and other predominantly Asian countries at low rates to recycle it. That obviously was not sustainable, and those countries fundamentally pushed back and said they would not accept this mixed junk anymore. So that I suppose fake valve has closed, and now we have to face the reality. Are plastic recycling companies making lots of money? Well, no. And what you're seeing is, even I suppose the opportunities to recycle lots of plastic have decreased. Even like plastic wrap and soft plastics can be collected from businesses, generally free of charge, but when the advice at the moment for dark or stained plastic wrap is that it can't be recycled commercially and it needs to go in general waste, which is obviously a very negative outcome. So that's the situation at the moment. I suppose it puts paid to anybody out there thinking of making $1 million from, or making their fortune from opening a plastic recycling business. There are many other ways to make money in recycling, from e-waste to metals, of course, and obviously cardboard. But plastic is more of an environmental thing, I suppose, for the vast majority of participants than a money-making gold mine. So I suppose we'll leave it there today. Obviously, as always, very interested in your feedback and what you thought of this podcast. And as always, like, subscribe and share, and hopefully we'll grow this recycling community. Thanks again.